I hope you're having a good day today. Thank you for joining me. We are going to be looking in Matthew chapter 23 today at the account. We're going to look at some of the woes pronounced on the Pharisees. Our hymn for the day is Seek Ye First.
Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Alleluia, alleluia.
As I said, Matthew chapter 23 now. We don't have time to read the whole chapter, but I will say, the Sermon on the Mount, you have the blessings, and it's real easy to only see that facet of the Lord's teachings, blessings. But it's like the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there were blessings and curses, if you're familiar with that account, where half of Israel was on one mountain, half the Israel was on another mountain, and the blessings and curses were told. And basically, if they would follow the Lord, they'd be blessed. If they turned from the Lord, they would be cursed. So the Lord does the same thing because the Lord doesn't change. And you have the blessings in the Sermon on the Mount, and in Matthew 23, you have the woes as it is. So he's speaking to the multitude, to his disciples. As I said, we don't have time to read the whole thing. I believe there are 7 woes pronounced. But as he goes on, I wanted you to see through the account, and he's speaking about different things, how they're actually keeping, shutting up the kingdom of heaven against men, not going in them, and not going in, and not allowing others to go in. But let's begin for our points today with verse 16. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? Whoever swears by the altar, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he is obliged to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore he who swears by the altar swears by it and by all things on it. He who swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. And so to just look at one of these, and they're all speaking about the same thing. For one thing, let your yes be yes and your no be no. But they were saying, whoever swears by the temple, it's nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Just think about that one, because that's interesting. Ethically, that's horrible, frankly. But when you think about, okay, so if you swear by the temple, you don't have to keep it, but if you swear by the gold, you do. And and you can tell what the Lord gets to. He's taking them deeper and deeper. And so it's the temple, and then it's the altar. But then the Lord starts talking about which is greater, the gift. See, they're swearing by the lesser. Which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? See, they were saying whoever swears by the gift, they're obliged to perform it. It's like, which one's greater? And so he's taking them further and further into the thought, because they're saying that if you swear by the altar, you swear by it and by all things on it. You swear by the temple, you swear by it and by him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. Eventually, it goes back to God. And so they needed to recognize the authority of God. They needed to recognize God behind all these things. You're going to swear by the temple. If you swear by the temple, you don't have to keep it. But if you swear by the gold, you are. What is the temple? God is all in all. They need to let their yes be yes and their no be no. And if they made vows, they needed to keep them, regardless. But you have this by the altar on it, by the gold on it. It's like, no, they needed to go more deeply into these things until eventually you find the Lord. That's the first point. Now, the second one And you just see their issue. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others done. And so it's the same sort of issue. They were tithing, which they were commanded to do, on these certain things, but they were neglecting the weightier matters of the law. They needed to go more deeply. And you have things that are, if you have things that are more weighty, you have things that are less weighty. And they're focused on the less weighty, and they're neglecting faith, mercy, and justice. Parallel accounts speak about the love of God as well. They're neglecting those things. And so you think about, they're looking at things just on the surface. Verse 25, woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. So it's the same thing. It's the outward. It's just on the surface. And that's what we can do as well. We can be the sort of Christian that it's just on the surface. And that's the Pharisees. Oh, well, if you swear by the gold of the temple, that's one thing. But if you swear by the temple, you don't have to do that. If it's the gift of the altar, that you have to do. But if you swear by the altar, that you don't have to do. You have to tithe on these things. But neglecting faith, mercy, and justice, that's acceptable. Cleanse the outside of the dish. But inside, you don't have to worry about washing that. And of course, he's making the point, it's hypocrisy. The whole thing is hypocrisy. So we just need to be very careful to make sure that our faith, to make sure that our religion is not useless, to use a phrase from James chapter 1, to make sure we're doing what's pleasing to the Lord. Otherwise, woe unto us. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.